All right, let's do Daf Mem Ches. We're going to start at the Mishnah at the top of Mem Ches Amud Aleph. Ha-Halel v'ha-Simcha shmoina ketzad. The chiyuv to say Halel and to have from the carbon shlomim is for 8 days of Sukkos and through Shmini Atzeres. Ketzad, how is this? Malamed shechayev adam b'Halel v'Simcha v'kova yom tif ha'achron shel Chag. So from this din, we know that you have to say Halal Simcha and have to be and covered Yom Tif even on Shmini Atzeres. Kishar Kol Yemais Hachag. It's just like an extension of the rest of Sukkos. So we know immediately talk to Gemara. How do you know that there is a mitzvah of Simcha on the 8th day, meaning Shmini Atzeres? The Tana Rabbana, and the pasuk says Vayisa Ach Sameach. And remember, this follows V'samachta Bechagecha. So there's already a yiter in having the extra Vayisa Ach Sameach. So the Gemara darshans L'Rabbais Leila Yom Tov Ha'achar, and this is coming to include the final last night of Yom Tov, meaning Shmini Atzeres at night. So that means you shech the carbon for the shlomim on the 7th day, on the last day of Sukkot, so you can eat it on Shmini Atzeres by night. So now the Brisa asks on itself, Eina Ella Yom Tov Rishon, maybe we're coming to be marbe the first night of Sukkot, meaning you would have to now shecht on Erev Yom Tif, because you're not allowed to shech the carbon at night. But if you shech by day on Erev Yom Tif, you'll be able to now have the shlomim the first night of Sukkot. So Keshu Aimer Ach Chilek, the Torah says Ach to qualify how much simcha you need to have. So we're going to put that with the last night of Yom Tif. So for the Gemara, Ma Royas L'Rabbis Leila Yom Tif Acharein Lohitzi Leila Yom Tif Rishon. Maybe it's the other way around, and you should be marba the first night of Yom Tif and not the last night of Yom Tif. So now the Gemara explains. Marba ani Leila Yom Tif Acharein Sheyesh Simcha Lefanav. It makes more sense that if you're going to have a ribui of more simcha, that you're going to extend the simcha of the last day into the final night. And not to make a bigger chiddush would be add the first night of Yom Tov where there is no simcha that you can schlep from beforehand. It would be a bigger chiddush to make the first night into a chiyuv to have the carbon than it would be the last night. Continues the Mishnah, Sukkah Shiva Ketzad. So the Sukkah mitzvah is for all 7 days. Ketzad, how is this? Gomar Milachel. If you finished eating your last Yom Tov meal on the 7th day of Sukkot, Lo yatir es sukkaisai. Do not take down your sukkah. Right? You never know. Maybe you want to eat some more, but don't just dismantle it right away. Avol mayrid es hakelim min amincha l'mayla. But you should create some kind of a distinction that it's going. Shmini Atzeres is no longer sukkah, so you should bring the kalim from after mincha back into your house. We'll see what kind of kalim we're talking about. Mimnei kavod yom tov ha'achron shel Chag, just to give kavod for that day of Shmini Atzeres. Now it's important to point out it's not just about giving kavod for Shmini Atzeres. There is also another problem of Bal Tosef if you sit in the sukkah and try to add to the mitzvah of sukkahs when it's not sukkahs. So now if a person might be stuck sitting in their sukkah because they have nowhere to go. So the Gemara understands that one of the eitzes of the Mishnah is you could be mayrid as your kalim. So now, talk the Gemara. Ein like kalim lahirid mahu. What happens if you have no kalim to take down from your sukkah? What should you do? How can you show and be magala that you're not being meisif on the mitzvah of sukkahs? So for the Gemara, ein like kalim. Then what was he doing all Yom Tov? I mean, if he had no kalim, how did he eat at all over Yom Tov? Ella ein le makom lahirid kalim mao. Let's say you have no kimta where he doesn't have any place to put his stuff. So how can he be magala that he's not trying to be meisif on the mitzvah of sukkahs? So Reb Chia bar Ashi Omar Peiches bo'arbo. You should open a 4 tefach wide opening in the schach, memela passeling your sukkah. And if you passel your sukkah, you're making it clear to everybody that you're not trying to be meisiv on the mitzvah. The Rishonim are bothered. Why are we taking 4 tefachim? We have learned that 3 tefachim is enough of airspace to passel a sukkah. 4 tefachim is the shear of passel schach. So why are we talking about 4 tefachim of an opening? And some of the Rishonim Taka learn that you're going to want to fill the airspace with pasel schach, so that's why you want to make it to 4 tefachim, which is a bit of a stretch, but okay. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omer, another mahalach for how you can demonstrate that you don't want to be meisif on the mitzvah is madlik ba es haner, because we've learned, I think back on Chavtes, if you're having a ner doluk in a sukkah katana, that will pasel the sukkah. It's mos. V'loi pligi. Halon v'halahu. These 2 different mahalchim is whether or not you were talking about in Bavel or in Eretz Yisrael. Because if you're living outside of Eretz Yisrael, then it's takas feka diyayma. So you can't really passel your sukkah, otherwise it would defeat the whole purpose. So over there, it's a better cheshbon to do a ner doluk. But in Eretz Yisrael, you could passel your sukkah. This idea of ner dolek, hatenach sukkah ketana, that only works if it's a sukkah ketana, but sukkah gedela ma'ikil memar. How is it going to show anything if you're sitting in a sukkah gedela? Because in a sukkah gedela, it doesn't share anything to have a ner dolek. And for the Gemara, the ma'il ba mani michla, you took the dirty kalim. Normally, you're not allowed dirty kalim in your sukkah, right? But here, if this guy has the dirty kalim with him in the sukkah, because that won't passel his sukkah, pashas that doesn't passel sukkah. There are some shitas that hold it does, but pashas doesn't passel sukkah. It's magala that you're not trying to be mekayim in the sukkah. The Omar Rava mani michla bar metalalta. All the kind of eating kalim need to be removed from the sukkah after you're finished using them. Mani mishtayim and metaltalota, but drinking kalim are not gross after you drink with a cup. You're allowed to leave it in the sukkah. But the point is that dirty kalim are supposed to leave the sukkah. So if you keep them in the sukkah, that's a way to be magala, even in your sukkah gedola, that you are not trying to be meisif on the Mishnah. Okay, now we start talking about nisach hamayim. Nisach hamayim keitzad. How did they do the nisach hamayim? Tzleichis shel zahav machzekah shleishalugim hayimamalam in a shiluach. Somebody, I think it didn't have to be a kayan, it was just somebody who would go and take this golden keli, and they would fill 3 lugim from the shiluach. Higiu l'shar mayim, when they reached the shar called the shar hamayim, taku v'hariya v'taku, they would blow a tkiyah tkiyah. Allah bakeves upana l'smail, the kayan who was holding this thing of water of the shmayim from the shiluach, he went up the keves and turned to his left. This is not standard, but the Gemara is going to get into that a little bit. Shnei sefalin shel kesef hayusham. There are 2 silver bowls on that southwestern corner of the Mizbeach. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer shel sid hayu. Rabbi Yehuda says the bowls were actually made out of sid, made out of plaster, not out of silver. But because they had a lot of wine poured into them, they became darkened, and they ultimately looked like silver, but they really were made out of plaster. Uminu kavin, and the bowls also had little teeny holes in them. Kimin shnei chaytmin dakin, like they looked like 2 different little nostrils. Echad ma'uva v'echaduk, one was a little thicker and one was thinner. Kadeshu shneim kolin b'vasachas, so that both would drain at the same time. Remember, because there's yain and there's mayim, and we want them to pour at the same time. The Gemara is going to get into this a little bit also, but we made one hole smaller than the other, so this way they would drain at the same rate. Ma'arve shel mayim, mizrache shel yain. The bowl that was on the Ma'ariv was for the Mayim, and the bowl that was in the Mizrach was for Yayin. Eira shel Mayim l'seich shel Yayin. If someone accidentally poured the water one into the one that was fermented for the Yayin, or shel Yayin l'seich shel Mayim, yotza b'di'evid, it's not ma'akiv, and you can mix and match. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Balug Haya Menasech Kol Shmini. You may remember from 2 blot ago, Rabbi Yehuda says the Kayan would only use 1 lug, not 3 lugin. That was one thing he argued about. And he was also menasech kol shmeina, and he did it for all 8 days of Yom Tov, while the Tanakama, who argues with Rabbi Yehuda, holds they only did the nisach hamayim on the first 7 days of Yom Tov, not on Shmini Atzeres, like Rabbi Yehuda is saying now. L'menasech omerle, and to the menasech, to this kain who was doing it, they, meaning in the Beis Mikdash, they would say, Hagbo yodecha, let us raise your hands while you do this. Why would they why would they want to see his hands? Shapam echad nisach echad al gabe raglav. One time a kayan poured the water on his feet. Uregamuhu kol ha'am be'esregehen, and all the people, they stoned him with their esregim. Apparently, the tzidukim during this time were very prevalent, and they were making problems. And since they didn't hold nisach hamayim because it's not mefurish in the Torah, this one particular kayan was being mevaza the avodah by pouring it on his feet. So because of that ma'isa, they threw the esregim, and apparently that was the catalyst for a terrible massacre in Klal Yisrael. But the ikar here is that they were chayshed at the kayan. They wanted to know for a fact that the kayan was really doing the avodah properly, so they asked him to show his hands. Vayter k'maseh b'chol kach maseh b'Shabbos, just like it was done on a weekday, so it was also done on Shabbos. El shahayim amalam erev Shabbos chavish shel zav she'ein mekudeshes min shiluach. What's the difference between this whole process during a weekday or on Shabbos? On Shabbos, you have a problem of haitzav schlepping the water from the shiluach, so they would do it on erev Shabbos. Umenicha b'lishka, and they would take that water and they would leave it in the lishka, in the room, until it became Shabbos. Nishpacha nisgalsa, if the water was spilled or became uncovered, hayim malam in akir, they would fill it up from the kir, which was already located in the mikdash. because anything that was uncovered, mayim megulim or the yayin's megula, is going to be puzzle. We're used to mayim megulim because of the eres of a nachash that could get into the poisonous venom of a snake. Rashi points out that here, if you have the eres of the nachash, it will change the shear. You will say this 3 lugin, part of that 3 lugin is going to be eres nachash and not actually the mayim from the shiluach. Zok the Gemara minoani mili. How do you know that you blew the trua tkiya when they brought the water? Amar Rav Ina, the Amar Kro, ushe'aftem mayim mesasain, that they would rejoice when they brought the water, and that's what they used to do. They blow the trua tkiya was a sign of their rejoicing. Now the Gemara is going to tell us a story which on the surface seems extremely strange. Hanu trei mini, there were these 2 minim. Chad shmei sasain, v'chad shmei simcha. One was named Sasan, one was named Simcha. Amar lei sasain l'simcha. Ani adifa minach. I am better than you. Dichsiv sasain l'simcha yasigo. My name is written before your name. Amar lei simcha l'sasain. Ana adifna minach. I'm better than you. Dichsiv simcha v'sasain la Yehudim. So sasain was written first. Amar lei sasain l'simcha. Oh, he's not settling for that. Chad yuma shavkuch v'shavuyach Parvanka. One day, the Shamayim's going to remove you of your chashav status and going to turn you into a shikyangel. Because, as it says, you have simcha seitzeu. One day you're going to go out and be a water carrier. Very, very strange dialogue, and you have to know why this is being brought in the Gemara. Some of Farshim explain that, of course, this is narishkeit. This is silly things they're saying, and that's kind of the point. We're showing how these tzedukim would say things that didn't have any meaning, and we're essentially making fun of these tzedukim. Still, the question remains: why does the Gemara need to record it? And the Gaon has, of course, a pshat in this that's all pianist, and of course that goes beyond the scope of this shir. Another similar kind of a story. Amar le'ahu mina d'shmei sasain l'Rabbi Avo. Someone, one of these tzedukim named Sasain, said to Ravo, Asidisu d'smali limaya l'alma da'asi. You're going to be, you meaning Klal Yisrael, is going to be filling up water for me in the olam haba. Dichsiv u'she'aftem mayim b'sasain, that you will be drawing water. Amar le'ah Ravo said, Yav iksiv l'sasain kidikamer. If the pasuk would have said we're going to draw water for sasain, maybe you're right. But hashdichsev bis sasin, we'll be drawing it with sasin. Mashchedehu gavra mashvina leguda umailin lebemaya. That means that the skin of that person, meaning you, is going to be made into a keli and it'll be used to draw the water. Which the Marsha explains. L'asad lavai, there's going to be a tchias amesim, but you sasin are not going to be part of that tchias amesim, and therefore we're going to make your face into a canteen. The Mishnah then said, Ola bekeves upanal smile, you turn left when you go up the keves for the nisach hamayim. Tana Rabbanan, kol ha'olam l'mizbech, olam derech yimen. Whenever you typically go up onto the mizbech, you always go on the right. Umakifin v'yardin l'derech smile, and when you go around the mizbech, you go back down on the left, right? So you circle around the mizbech and you go down on the left side. Chutz min ha'olam l'shloishet dvarim below, except for someone who's going for the things that we're going to be listing soon. She'olam derech smile. Because you go up on the left side of the keves and you kind of go down on that same way you came up. And these are the 3 things that would require the kohen to go on the left side. Nisach hamayim, nisach hayayin, and the third thing is oilas ha'oif k'sharav b'mizrach, by the oilas ha'oif that they would do at the corner of the mizbech. If there was k'sharavsa, when there were so many of these birds that the kohanim had to do it on I guess they got pushed over to the Tzad HaMizrach of the Mizbech. So in those cases, you would stay on the left side of the keves and come down the same way you came up. Elishayim Mashchirin. Rabbi Yehuda says that the bowls were not really made out of silver. They're made out of sid, but because they had darkened because of the wine, they were mashchirin. They looked like they were silver. So bishlam yayin mashker. I understand if they had wine in them, it's mashker. It becomes darkened, and that's why it looked like silver. But demaya amay mashker. But why was a bowl that was used only for water, for the mayim, why did that become dark? Well, water doesn't make anything dark. If one accidentally poured the water went into the wine one, or the wine went into the water one, yotza, and they're not makiv which bowl you pour into. Clearly, this mistake would happen. So even the one that was designated for water, that would also become dark because accidentally some kohanim would inadvertently pour wine into it. And the bowls had little holes in them that looked like nostrils. Let's say this is going like Rabbi Yehuda, and not the Rabbanan Ditnan. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda, you used 1 lug, which is different than the Rabbanan Tanakama who said 3 lugin, and you did a kol shmeina, as opposed to Tanakama who said you do for 7 days. It's got to be Rabbi Yehuda. Di Rabbanan ki hadadi ninu, because if it goes like the Rabbanan who said that the yayin and the mayim both had 3 lugin, so they're equivalent. Why should the size of the holes be different? In other words, it makes sense if it's Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds is going to be 1 and 3. So that means I should have one hole bigger than the other hole in order that this way they would go out in tandem. Now, so I think more afilu tamer rabbanan, because chamra samich maya kolish. The wine is thicker and it's more viscous, I guess, and water is thinner, and therefore you would drain out faster. So the different sizes of the 2 holes would allow the 2 different kinds of liquids, even though they have different thicknesses, they would come out at the same time. Hochi nami mistaber, it's mistaber that the Tana is the Rabbanan and not Rabbi Yehuda who made the difference between 1 and 3 lugin, because he would have used a different lashon of Rachav and Kutzer. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Shnei Kisva'is Hayusham. There were 2 of these kalim on top of the mizbeach. Echad shel mayim, echad shel yayin. Shel yayin pia Rachav. The opening of the one for yayin was very wide. V'shel mayim pia Kutzer, and the one for mayim was narrow. Kadesh Yushneim Kalim Bas Achas. So you see that Shemamina. You see from the fact that Rabbi Yehuda had that kind of expression to explain the difference between the yayin and the mayim. It's mistaver that he's not the Tana of our Mishnah, calling them Mishnei Chait Min Dakin.